we've worked some with strings. And strings, think of that as being like text, okay? And so we did something like this very early on in the semester. I can create a string variable called name, and in single quotes, I can enter in a name, and here I entered in John Smith. Each of those letters is actually stored as a separate entry in an array. So if I would do name parentheses 1, that would pull out the first letter in that string, which in this case is a capital J. If I would do name parentheses 2, that would give me the second letter in the string, which is an O. And if I would do name parentheses 10, there aren't 10 letters in this string, so I would get an index exceeds matrix dimensions. Same thing that would occur if I were working with a vector of numbers. Regular arrays do not work well at all for strings, so don't even try to put strings in regular arrays. Instead, use cell arrays. Cell arrays work extremely well for handling strings and for handling mixed data types. For cell arrays, you use curly brackets rather than square brackets to enter the array. Other than that, the indexing works exactly the same. So for example, I'm going to create a cell array of months, and yes, I know I didn't type all 12 months. We just have 5 months here. Wanted it to fit on one line. So I have a cell array, months equal, and notice there is a curly brace there rather than a square bracket. So I have my curly brace. I always enclose strings in single quotes. So I have January, February, March, April, May, and the curly braces. If I hit enter, it comes back with the 5 strings for those months. Now notice the indexing works exactly the same way. So if I do months and in parentheses 1, this will pick out the first entry out of that cell array and come back with January. If I would do months, parentheses 5, that's going to pick out the 5th string in that cell array, which is May. This particular cell array is a vector of strings. You can do exactly the same thing and make matrices of strings. So I can have strings, multiple rows and columns of strings. And again, the only change is instead of using square brackets, you use these curly braces. Now, we just looked at some logical operators for vectors and matrices. We looked at the equal or the is equivalent to, the greater than, the less than, the greater than or equal to, that kind of thing. For a string, the only thing that really makes a lot of sense is the is equivalent to operation. But for a string, you definitely do not want to use the equal operator. Instead, what you want to use is a Matlab function called string comp, strcmp. So if I run strcmp months, February, this function is going to take the cell array of months that we previously defined, and it's going to compare it to the string February. And look what it produces. It produces a false for the first entry because the first entry was January. It produces a true for the second entry because that was indeed February. And it produces falses for the remaining 3 months because those were not a match to February. Now you got to be a little careful about this. If I run the exact same command, but I take February and I turn that capital F into a small f, I'm actually going to get falses all the way across because MATLAB is case sensitive, and MATLAB sees the text February starting with a capital F as different from the text February starting with a small f. If you don't want this operation to be case sensitive, you can use strcmp and put an I at the end. And in that case, I could randomly capitalize or non-capitalize any of the letters, and it's just going to strictly be looking at a letter match rather than a case match. And finally, the other version of this is strncmp, and I can use a third argument in that function, and I can say, okay, only compare the first 3 letters of months to the string FEB. right, so to wrap this up, regular arrays are really convenient for doing a lot of different types of numerical computations and programming applications, and we're actually going to talk about array operations and array applications for the rest of this semester. All of the entries in a regular array have to be of the same type. You can't have some entries that are doubles, some entries that are 8-bit unsigned integers, some entries that are 16-bit signed integers. It has to be the same and uniform across the entire array. Cell arrays are great if you want to work with strings or if you want to mix your data types up. All right, so now it's your turn. The next 3 slides have some various commands that you're supposed to try in Matlab. All right, so you can put this thing on pause and try these commands. Make sure you understand what's happening. Now try this set of commands. Put the video on pause. Make sure you understand what these commands are producing. Now try this set of commands. See if you understand what the output is.